the Everett Monument is in that surrounding area. And that permission was given in 1886. And I think I say we, using that as a village board, did ask for permission for other certain things over the course of years, and those things were granted over the course of years. Now, this issue came up when I was first appointed village attorney back in 2003, and I commissioned a title search, because the issue is who owns title to that property, because the Orange County tax map shows that portion of property and more as being owned by the village of Goshen, okay? Knowing, of course, however, that tax map does not transfer title. If the tax map department says Mayor Higgins owns my house, he doesn't own my house. I still own my house. It's the deed of record that controls. The deed of record, I've had 2 title companies look at this, still indicates that it's the First Presbyterian Church that owns that property. As I've communicated to this board and prior boards, absent more, title is in the church. When I say absent more, are you asking me to investigate, because I told 3 village boards prior that if you want to advance the claim that you own it, you're going to need something more. You're going to have to demonstrate that you occupied it under a claim of right, that in fact you thought you owned it since 1900, pick a date, a long time ago. And you know what? The church is not going to say, oh yeah, we think you're right. Okay, I don't assume that's going to happen. Correct. So we're going to have a pretty serious dispute with the First Presbyterian Church over this issue. Okay? Now, as a result of that, I think we've all tried to reach a compromise. I think, quite frankly, on the one hand, there's a group of people who might not go your way on the title issue, but would say, it's worked pretty good since 1886. Why upset the apple cart now? Okay? And then there's some other folks that would say, well, we'd like to take a look at, perhaps we should just confirm, I assume that you're looking to confirm that the Presbyterian Church does in fact own the property, and we'll do it through a lease agreement. As I said I can't remember, I've written so many letters, but I wrote a letter at one point in time where I said I think the dispute is more one of form than substance.
Correct.
Okay? So, I understand what everyone's saying, but I don't want this to get carried away into a bigger dispute than it really is.
And I just want to add to that this was discussed a lot when I was on the board before. In paraphrasing some advice that was given to us by the village attorney, which he just alluded to, I think at some point we're kind of stalled at where it was then. You gave us the great advice that it's kind of an unusual relationship. It's kind of an unusual situation. The church owns the property, but they let us run it, basically that portion, which is from the benches on. There is a survey out there at this point. But generally, we all know we're talking about from the benches, the Everett Monument forward, that over time, over, I guess, 1886, the village has granted people permission put up signs and do that sort of thing and take on that, kind of police municipal function that we have in those kind of situations. But the church has never conceded that they don't own it. And the advice you gave us at that time was something to the effect, that great beautiful phrase, I think, if it ain't broke, why fix it? The church at this point has made it very clear that they're not satisfied with that anymore, and they want it clarified. I think the quitclaim deed, in fairness, and the pastor and Scott or Bill, they can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was we have absolutely no influence or have ever had any control over any of that property absent that piece of property from the benches on. And the church, because of this situation, although the tax map doesn't convey any title, they wanted a quitclaim deed for the piece of property where the church sits and all the rest of that, to make it clear that the village has no claim to that. And what David said to them when they were here last week was, we don't own it anyway, but we'll be happy to give you a quitclaim deed to say whatever we have, we relinquish. Am I pretty much correct about that?
With respect to those, whatever we don't have.
Whatever we don't have.
Never have.
And we never have. And I don't think that the village has a legal claim of title to that piece of property. It's just an issue of how we resolve what has been this ongoing
With respect
relationship.
to the Everett Monument parcel, I'll call it the Everett Monument parcel for reference. The advice that I gave in 2003 is no different from tonight, that without more, based upon the opinion of two title companies, I can't say that we own it.
I know that for me, I think that Trustee Matthews made a lot of important comments about that being the center of the village, but my understanding with the church's position is they're willing to lease that to the village, and the village would be able to maintain using that area for at least 30 years, and 31 years, or for $1 a day.
A year.
$1 a year.
You give it away too much.
$1 a year.
The church is poor,
So,
they
I
want to
mean,
pay $360.
The village would still maintain use of that property for 30 years at minimum, and indicated that potentially beyond that. And I think based on what you said, David, I don't see us having a claim to that area. So if we don't have a claim and we still have use of the area, I think that would satisfy us, I can only speak for myself. But I mean, if there was information presented that the village did have a legitimate claim to that, then I'd be happy to see that and take out that clause. But at this point, I haven't seen anything to indicate the village has a substantial claim to it.
Not that we have done anything but to progress as we should in discussing this when someone comes with us. But I think something as monumental as this deserves a public discussion. The public is sitting here very quietly listening, not knowing specifically what we're talking about because they don't have the information in front of them. Given the opportunity to look at that, to prepare questions, to have call it public informational meeting before the elected officials turn over what they have always considered their village dream, I think is an appropriate step. To give the opportunity an opportunity to ask the questions that they choose to ask and to participate. With all respect to how any of us may feel individually about this or what we're satisfied with or not, I think the public has had no opportunity for satisfaction. And I think that they deserve that opportunity to ask their questions and get answers before a vote is taken.
I certainly have no problem with that. I just think that based on what we're talking about here, we don't need to have a public hearing. If we want to put it on the agenda and advertise it so people can be here.
Well, that's the purpose of my question. What's the objective?
Then that's what a public meeting is.
What's the objective of the public hearing, public informational session,
Mhm.
whatever you're going to call it? Because at the end of the day, if we have 400 people come and 300 people vote to say keep it, that doesn't mean we own it.
That's right.
I understand that. That's what you're saying. I understand that's what you're saying. But it certainly may impact the way people vote.
Can we, why don't we do this, just a suggestion? Why don't we schedule, on our next meeting, we schedule, in the meantime, we forward this lease to the church and their attorney to take a look at it, because I'm sure they're not gonna say, oh yeah, this is great, let's go for it, there's gonna be back and forth a couple of times. So why don't we do, to not delay anything, why don't we just start moving it along by giving it to the church and their attorney to take a look and see, because there's gonna be corrections and changes to this. And at the same time, at the next village meeting, we schedule a public information session.
So then the public would still have a chance to comment.
Yeah, we're not gonna do anything, and we're just gonna forward this lease to them, for them to take a look at. Because based on past experience, whenever we have anything of a legal document, it goes back and forth between attorneys and the interested parties. It's not gonna be accepted in total. So why don't we, rather than delaying everything, why don't we move along parallel lines where we have, we will let the First Presbyterian Church and their attorney look at this agreement. And then at the same time, we schedule a meeting, a public information hearing at our next meeting, which would be when, May 8th, 10th, something like that. Whatever date is, May 10th or whatever.
My question would just simply be, could we wait at least until next Monday, so that each of us has a chance to read that? I don't know if David, if he'll be here next Monday or not, it could be, so that we could put our questions forth to David also, as to what these various paragraphs mean.
Well, I do have a conflict. I'm in Hampton on next Monday, but certainly, I know you all have my email address.
Would that make this a legal document for people can't take a look at this then? Correct?
Say again?
Can the public look at this document?
There's nothing in this document that is of a confidential nature. I mean, once it's Once it's here, once it's in Village Hall, it's subject to the Freedom of Information law. This is not a confidential settlement. In fact, I would go on the opposite side. I would say this is the type of thing that